Update. My 33F husband, 40M, is considering conceiving a child with his ex. Previous post. I didn't know the throwra unrule for low score alt accounts, so my previous post was removed, but the text is still there, I think. Update TLR. Husband and I will be getting counseling and ending all contact with BM. Thank you again to the blunt takes on my situation. Days are still mostly a blur right now, and writing out my issue and reading through the straightforward advice did help ground me a bit. I went ahead and took action on something I could control, reached out to my therapist and got a reference for a couples counselor who is specifically experienced in dealing with grief around child loss. I was thankfully able to get us fit in for an appointment this week. After I returned home from work last night, my husband came into our room and immediately started sobbing and apologizing. He had spoken with his dad that day and told him what BM had proposed. My father-in-law, bless him, had apparently really went off on the delusion of it. My husband and I had a long into the early morning talk about it, and he was able to recognize and explain that what seemed like interest in BM's request was misplaced desires. He explained that he's been so focused and excited about the prospect of planning for a child with me for the last 4 months and envisioning life as a father of 2, and it felt confusing to still be feeling that while dealing with the devastation of losing his son. BM's ask was a total shock for him too, and when you're face to face with someone grieving so deeply asking for your help, a solution, however absurd it is, it's not always as easy to think logically. He was receptive and seemed relieved to have the therapy appointment, so I am hopeful that will be a start in unpacking these complicated and conflicting feelings. We agreed that he should ultimately end all contact with BM, but will still consider what sort of short-term, lump sum financial support makes sense with consult from a lawyer to keep it entirely copacetic. I realize some commenters find the financial part odd, but I just feel strongly about extending appropriate generosity in this transition since we have the means to do so. We also agreed to hold off on any child planning until sufficient time and counseling takes place. Also, I just want to address the comments on stay-at-home single mom aspect in defense of BM. I only mentioned that part to say how entirely devoted she was to her son. She was the primary physical caregiver, and yes, the child support order was enough that it allowed her the option to stay home full-time and live comfortable but not extravagantly. Is it the same decision I would make as a career-minded person? No, but that was her prerogative and I do respect that. I really don't know much about BM as a person, but what I do know is that she was raising a kind, funny, and smart boy who was loved and cared for, and that was what ultimately mattered. To say there's a lot still up in the air emotionally is an understatement. My husband and I are saying the right things to each other now. Who knows what it will end up being in practice. But I am hopeful at this point that my husband and I will be able to move forward together. Hey, I read your original and am happy that this is the follow-up. Glad he saw the light, so to speak, and I hope you guys can work through this. The loss of a child is awful and I think you handled it very well throughout. I am glad Phil was able to talk some sense into your husband. I am truly sorry for what you guys are facing. With respect to compensation, I admire you for your willingness to extend that to her even after what she had asked. I understand grief is a very powerful thing, but lines have been crossed nonetheless. Wish you luck op and sorry for your loss. It's nice to hear when in-laws aren't crazy. Glad to hear this update and that you are able to get into a counselor so quick. If your husband doesn't have his own one to deal with his grief, he probably should get one. Hear me out, I'm prepared for downvotes. I think what BM asked of is extremely inappropriate and no way should your husband go through with it. However, she is grieving terribly, she lost her child. And the only other person who loved that child as much as her is your husband. So while I think that of course he shouldn't use his sperm for insemination, I don't think you both should cut contact with her. You co-parented with her, you shared love for this child. Maybe offer your support and establish boundaries. Great Phil you have there, I'm very glad he told your husband. Wishing you all the best. Good luck with everything. It sounds like this is the best first step you can take to healing. I can't imagine the loss or feelings you're all experiencing. I hope you and your husband are able to navigate everything and come through in a stronger and healthier union. Heart. Got a great job offer in new city but my wife says no. I was kind of surprisingly offered a new career path. The job would be a no-ceiling startup with friends, and I would be starting off being paid twice what I make now. It would be enough to support both of us while she looks for something new. The new city is only 4 hours from where we live now. Where we live now, our lease is about to be up and she does not like it here anyway. I can also barely make rent with my current job. There are lots of reasons this makes sense. She brings in barely any income and I pretty much support us. We are also in the middle of trying to get through a lot of other personal problems between us. This would be a great opportunity for me and my career, but she simply is saying she doesn't want to move to that city because she doesn't like it, and that is not our plan. Having a hard time trying to figure out how to proceed. How old are you, and do you have kids together? We are also in the middle of trying to get through a lot of other personal problems between us. Say more about this. It's a startup with friends. Is she worried the startup won't be successful and you'll be jobless soon? Honestly? With no kids I would go and hope she follows. You don't want to miss out and resent her later. If she does not, with your lease up it's a fresh start for both of you. Good luck with your startup. Does her no has any explanation? Like a reason behind it or a plan? Play out all the scenarios. She's miserable where you are. You are not happy where you are. You move to the new areas and she stays miserable. You may really be happy. You stay where you are and you both stay miserable and you resent the loss of opportunity. Now you are more miserable. You move back to where her folks live. She's happy. You are miserable. If she wants to leave to return to be closer to her parents and that's the only future she sees where she is happy and you don't, you have both reached the impasse point where you need to address your versions of life satisfaction are incompatible. If neither of you wants to face the idea of divorce, then make it a 6-month trial separation to start. My 30s M girlfriend, 30s F crying about proposal, babies, etc. Some background. My girlfriend and I have been together for 2.5 years and she has always been the one pushing for more in the relationship when I felt it was too early, particularly how hard, slow it was dating during the pandemic. I am her first, only real relationship. I also have an older relative living with me in a house I own. My girlfriend has dropped all sorts of crass hints regarding marriage, like planning an itinerary for an upcoming trip with ring emojis on it and so on, which I have asked her repeatedly not to do because we both know there's practical issues with us moving in together, e.g. there is not space in this house and I am not going to turf my older relative out on their own. This living situation of mine has been clear, consistent from the beginning and she initially and previously stated the fact that I am taking care of my relative was something that endeared her to me as it showed I was caring, family-oriented, her words. I'd also point out here this is in Europe, not the US where I understand living with relatives past 18 is basically unheard of. It is more normal than that in this country although not necessarily common. We have had straightforward discussions that there's no real practical way of us cohabiting right now although I am actively saving to upsize the house. We have been planning a big trip to somewhere she's always wanted to visit in the country for her birthday, and I realize now that she clearly intended a proposal on this holiday. Incidentally, when we started dating she told me she had no interest in marriage. It was me that said I always saw it as an important step before having kids. When she realized this, after wanting to know more about her birthday gifts, and asked me several times first if there was a ring there, then if I was going to propose, anytime soon, which actually meant on the holiday, she has basically gone into what I can only describe as a depressive episode. If I call her to talk she is uncommunicative. She sits there crying, actually pretending she is not crying, covering her face with cushion. She goes into detail about how she was going to get a manicure and has now cancelled it and cut her nails. This may sound weird but I'm 99% sure this had something to do with social media picture of, the ring, etc. It's a complete communication breakdown. The trip is still happening in a few days. In fact, I managed to get agreement of where we should go for her birthday dinner the day before we go and then she just broke down and started crying again. I can't seem to have any meaningful interaction with her since the event and I don't have a clue what to do. I'm miserable because I genuinely love her and I have done a lot to support her, emotionally, financially. But now because this particular step isn't happening on this particular date I feel like I'm dealing with a completely different person. What kind of rationalization exists for her behavior? Am I being a completely harsh judge here? I know that age is a sensitive thing and that she's concerned she will be too old to have a child soon. The fact some women have kids into their 40s is irrelevant to her. But I have been clear. Said to her that I feel like within a year or so we'll be in a better spot in terms of how we can live together and it doesn't seem to go in at all. I feel like I'm now competing against an idealized, romanticized version of myself that exists without any of the constraints around our lives. which obviously I can't measure up to, and it makes me feel like complete shit. Have y'all sat down and discussed the timeline for milestones? That might help with this. The fact that some women have kids in the 40s is irrelevant to her. Dear fucking Lord, don't be one of those idiot men that think just because it happens to a few it's easy. A lot of those having babies in their 40s are doing so with IVF. Which I don't know about your country, but can be fucking expensive. If you want kids, purposefully waiting until the woman is in their 40s is not the way to have a kid. What's going to change in a year? Why are you so confident in a year you'll want to propose? Love isn't enough. She wants to have kids, and time is running out. She is terrified that you don't really want this, and are just stringing her along until it's too late. She can't just wait another year. Will you want another year after that? You have to make some decisions here. What's more important? Your girlfriend or your older relative? Do you really want to have kids with her? If you do, you need to get moving or you're going to lose her. Or are you willing to let her go instead? The fact some women have kids into their 40s is irrelevant to her, full stop. That's only half of the sentence. The fact some women have kids into their 40s with greater risk of harm to the mother and greater risk of complications for the child is extremely relevant to her. You're using the relative in your house as an excuse to keep her away. You have had 2.5 years to figure out a living situation for the 2, maybe 3, of you. She has every right to know from you if there is a path towards marriage at this point. Move in, propose, marry, kid, and so on. You have to have step 1 for step 4 to happen. It's time for you to make a decision and stop being a child. This is a grown woman you are stringing along. Good luck. Stop stringing her along. You sound like you have commitment issues. Your post is so vague about how you feel about her. You basically disparage her, e.g., crass hints, for wanting to marry you. You cast aside her feelings and thoughts with comments like having a kid in your 40s, which isn't biologically true for many women. TBH, when I read this it sounds like you don't love her. Tell her this is as far as your relationship will go and see what she does with that information. 2.5 years of dating with no signs of moving in together or any other development is a long-ass time for a grown person in their 30s. It might be time for her to move on to someone who has those goals. Women who want babies in their 30s are on a timer. Talk about it honestly. Is there any chance she'll get what she wants with you? I think my husband cheated on me, but he swears he was just caught in a bad situation. My husband and I have been together for 10 years. We have a child and a home together. We often have friends come over to hang out that we have known for years. One day we had a play date with our son and one of our friend's kids. She is a single mother, we can call her Jody. I wasn't feeling well that day and was getting over a stomach bug. While the kids played in our yard, my husband and one of his other male friends, Tom, and Jody were watching TV and drinking beers. When it started to get late around 9:30 p.m. my son was tired and so was I from still feeling sick. I took my son to our room to go to bed with me in my room while the kids played in his room with his toys and the adults were in the living room. I figured everyone would leave soon anyways. At 2 a.m. I woke up with a strange gut feeling to go check on my husband. I walked out of our room and saw nobody in the living room. I checked my son's room to find all of Jody's kids sleeping in his room. I noticed Tom had left since I didn't see his shoes by the door. I checked the rest of the house and my husband and Jody were nowhere to be found. I noticed the master bathroom door was locked with the light on. I knocked on the door and briefly heard my husband's voice. I started banging on the door asking what was going on. I opened the door and my husband stayed. Jody is being crazy and joking around, and tried to brush it off as a joke. I see Jody in the shower completely naked and my husband sitting there with his clothes on. Angry and hurt, I immediately slammed the door and ran upstairs. My husband followed me begging for me to understand, and it's not what I think. I was so angry I was screaming at him to the point I almost got physical with him, but I stopped myself because the kids were in the house. Jody was crying stating nothing happened, but I kicked her out of my house. The best day, my husband broke down crying saying he doesn't want to lose me or our family, saying that he loves me and this was all a huge misunderstanding. I don't know what to believe. He swears that what actually happened was that when it got late, Jody started to feel sick from the beers. So he proceeded to help her in the bathroom. Then out of nowhere Jody started taking all her clothes off and he didn't know what to do. Then that's when I woke up and started knocking on the door. But if that was the case, why was the door locked and they were both in there? Jody texted me the next day apologizing and swearing up and down that nothing happened and that she would never hurt me or my marriage, that she loves us as friends and she just has a drinking problem. I don't know what to believe. I forgave my husband eventually, but I feel like that was a mistake. I feel my love for him dying away. I don't know if I should leave because I already invested so much in this relationship. I grew up as a foster child, so I do not have any family of my own outside of his. I don't have the extra help and support on my end with our son. Long story short, don't give someone your everything because that gives them the power to leave you with nothing. Locked door with him inside says it all. Zero plausible explanation. Truly 0.00% chance that his story is factual. If his story was legit, he would have led the sick friend to the bathroom, shower, and then left the room to give her privacy, get her water or something. Figure out a way to start planning the separation and eventual divorce. Good luck. Locked doors? Her hopping quick in the shower? Whispers proving that they were in the same bedroom before she quickly hopped in the shower? Don't be naive. Honesty, it seems like you interrupted them before they could do further. Jody was completely naked in front of your husband with the door locked. Her actions are very hurtful to you and she needs to distance herself away from your marriage, home and husband. IDK what happened here, but a line was definitely crossed. Start looking for a good lawyer just in case. They can help you through this tricky situation even if you don't decide to divorce. You might be able to get your husband to admit to it, but good chance he will deny. The first time they are caught is almost never their actual first time. I would start going through records, phones, computers, etc. And continue to stay vigilant. He might cool it for a bit, but will start up again. They have GPS trackers online if you want to start tracking his car without his knowledge. Yeah, it's very obvious he is lying. Best case scenario, you interrupted them before penetration happened. Just please remember, saying together because of the kids is the most used and worst excused on this subject. The old saying, it's better to be from a broken home than to live in one, is still very much valid.